logically, the idea is to buy a piece of shit house. Yes? Okay. The idea is to buy a piece of shit house, make it look pretty, and then sell it and make a bunch of money, right? Like that's the ultimate goal. So there's three primary numbers flippers are going to be looking at. There's going to be the acquisition price. There's going to be a rehab budget. And then there's going to be ARV, which stands for after rehab value. Okay. These are the three most important numbers you need to know. If you want to speak the language of a flipper, you need to know these three different numbers. Logically, this is what is it going to cost them to actually acquire this property. The rehab budget, which I'll give you guys some numbers, some basic numbers that you guys can use when you're talking to flippers so that you can calculate these. And the most important number is the after rehab value. What is this property going to sell for once it's completely rehabbed? This number is arguably the most important number in this entire thing. You almost need to work backwards. We were doing an exercise on the deal doctoring yesterday, and at the end of the day, you need to know these two numbers to figure out this number, which is backwards. Most people tend to work top to bottom, but in reality, you've got to work bottom to top. Because what you'll find is most flippers have either a dollar goal or they have a percentage goal. And you need to figure out what that is. Most of the flippers I know, they won't mess with any deal that's not gonna make them at least like 30 grand. Some people won't do it if it doesn't make them 50 grand. Some people it's 100 grand. Like I'm not messing with anything that doesn't make me 100. I don't have time for it. It's not worth the headache or the stress for me. How much did you just make on yours? 260. It's a good number. That's his bar. He's not gonna mess with anything under 260 now. But you're gonna understand that you'll need these three numbers and you can figure out how much money can be made on a deal. I have a whole calculator that I'll share with you guys that you guys can play with. But ultimately, you got to figure out what is somebody's tolerance. The people that are flipping 100 homes a year, they're willing to take much lower numbers. Where KP or myself might flip 1 or 2 houses a year, we're going to need a much bigger number. It's got to make sense for us to do it. We don't have all the contractors lined up, everybody ready to go, you know, where they're literally going from project to project to project. That's a lot harder, so it's got to be more worth it because we got to line up people, which lining up labor in this market is a freaking nightmare. So these are the three numbers that you need to know. I've talked to a few of my buddies to just help you guys get rough ideas of numbers on the rehab, because that's one of the things that can be very intimidating where you guys don't know what to say, so you just avoid it. So I'm going to go with like a level 1, a level 2, or a level 3 rehab. If you guys want to figure out just easy numbers that you guys can use when you're talking to flippers to try to figure out budgets, I'm going to assume you're coming in and doing a full remodel. That's going to include kitchen, bath, windows, doors, floors, paint, all of the essentials, excluding roofs, because roofs, Corinne can tell you, are very expensive right now, excluding HVAC, because you don't need that on a lot of these houses. So this is just the typical remodel. New kitchen, new baths, new floors, windows, doors, the whole nine. Assuming you're in like a level 1, I would put that as like, that's going to be East County, that's going to be Del Cerro, Allied Gardens, San Marcos, Escondido. Like you're just kind of more generic entry to maybe mid-level homes. In today's market, you're probably around $60 a square foot on the rehab. So if you're looking at a house that is 1,500 square feet that needs a full gut remodel, you're probably going to be about $90,000 on that rehab in today's market. So roughly $60 a square foot. If you're stepping up to a tier 2 property, I'm thinking PB, Ocean Beach, Point Loma, Bay Park, like you're stepping up to nicer but not super high end, you're probably going to be about $80 a square foot. So that same 1,500 square foot house is probably going to run you closer to $120. And then if you're doing like La Jolla, Rancho Santa Fe, Fairbanks, that kind of stuff, in this market, you're probably around $110 a square foot. So now you're, 110 times 1,500. My brain's not good enough to do that today. It's a lot of freaking money, right? It's going to cost you a ton. So these will give you some rough numbers, and this is what investors like to have when you're sending them properties. They want you to send it over and tell them, hey, here's what it's listed at, here's what I've got rehab at, here's what I've got ARV at. That's what they want to know. They want to know that you did some of the work up front. They don't want you to just send them a property like, hey, I found a good deal that's $800,000. Okay, well, how much is it going to cost to rehab it? What's it going to be worth when it's done? Like, they need to know that information. If you're not sending them that information, you're not really doing your job. You need to know these different numbers. So these, obviously there's tons of variability in this, but I want to give you guys some rough numbers. Obviously you can have a contractor come out, bid it, all that stuff. Now understand, if this is somebody who's flipping 100 properties a year, they have their own contractors, they're going to be substantially lower than this. But to give you guys rough numbers, here's some rough numbers that you guys can play with so that you can estimate rehabs on properties. Does this make sense? Yeah.
Can you say the areas again for number one?
So areas like number one, that would to me would be like East County. That would be Claremont, Serra Mesa, Escondido, San Marcos, Vista, like more of your inland communities for the most part, but just not higher end. Like these are more your entry to maybe mid-level homes.
Is that because the contractors themselves are charging different? Or is
It's the materials, the quality of materials, yeah. Jen's holding the mic. So the question was, why is it lower there? It's just the quality of materials you're gonna use. Like you don't necessarily need to have full custom cabinets when you're doing a house in El Cajon, right? You don't need to have Carrera marble with a waterfall edge. You don't need to have like, we're doing my bathroom right now. I think my fucking shower fixture is like $1,000. Like you're not doing that in El Cajon. So the quality of the materials that you're going to use is going to be substantially different. You're going to have a lot more custom work done, custom features, custom built-in stuff like that as you start moving up to those higher levels.